Hello and welcome. My name is Al Barrows, and this is UFO Disclosure, the podcast that's meant to show an average person's reaction to all the UFO, UAP news from everywhere and anywhere. Today, I'd like to relate something that I saw on Catálogo Paranormal. It's about a UFO encounter that occurred in 1877, long before the modern UFO era. In 1877, long before the rise of the UFO phenomenon, a surprising story began to circulate in the Argentine press. It was published in the newspaper La Capital de Rosario through a letter signed by an alleged French chemist, identified as Serge. In it, he described in detail a strange event near Carcaraña in the province of Santa Fe. What is most unsettling is that this case occurred 70 years before the first modern sighting in 1947. According to what Serge wrote to the editor of the Argentine newspaper, he explained that he had come to Carcaraña to recover his health. In the first days after his arrival, he made his way through the town. And it was on one of those tours of the riverbanks that Serge found a huge, unusual-looking rock, which he described as a large, black, void-shaped rock. He said that what caught his attention the most was its blackish appearance. So he examined it carefully before noticing that it was a meteorite. And as he would corroborate in his letter to the newspaper, the meteorite was colossal. So, intrigued by the uniqueness of the find, he returned days later, accompanied by two other individuals. Among them were Mr. Paxton and Mr. Davis, the latter being a geologist as well as an Argentine laborer named Jose Villegas, with the aim of examining the structure in greater detail. They began drilling into the rock mass in order to analyze its internal composition. And in the process of drilling, various mineral components were noticed, some of them considered uncommon. Serge described the rock as covered by a thick black layer and composed of various chemical substances such as graphite, iron, silica, and other complex minerals not found on Earth. For example, Shiberite was found, which is a double phosphorus of iron and nickel. Its presence in the meteorite is proof that the hot state of the surface had not lasted long and that the heat had not penetrated into the interior of the mass. In other words, when the meteorite entered the atmosphere, the outside had heated up a lot, but the inside remained relatively cold. Then, after several days of work, the drilling revealed the existence of a hole inside the meteorite. Serge found a gap in the meteorite and placed a fuse attached to some explosives. The following explosion prompted the expansion of the opening until the entry to the interior was possible. Once inside, they claimed to have found a somewhat void-shaped quadrangular space on whose walls they identified elements that appeared to have been deliberately placed. Among them stood out an object similar to a white metal amphora riddled with holes and strange drawings, which increased doubts about the object's origin. They continued the investigation, finding a second cavity hidden underneath a metal plate. After removing the plate, they claimed to have discovered a structure that they interpreted as a tomb. Inside, according to Serge, was a body wrapped in a shroud, whose appearance suggested a prolonged state of preservation. As the mineral incrustations were partially removed, a small figure began to be revealed, with characteristics that those present could not explain. Among the features, Serge mentions that the figure had no hair, a flattened face, and instead of a nose, a trunk protruding from the forehead, as well as reduced teeth and elongated limbs. That description also emphasizes an unconventional morphology that was interpreted by them as an indication of a non-terrestrial origin. This interpretation was reinforced when they found a small metal plate with engraved symbols, among which were the drawings of a rhinoceros, a palm tree, and the sun. Around the sun, there were several stars on this engraving, and the planets Mars, Jupiter, Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Neptune. But only the planet Mars was much larger than the others. Afterward, the remains and objects found would be exhibited to the public in Carcaraña, near the coast, in the house of Mr. Francisco Rigoni, in front of the central station. But the meteorite itself was so heavy it was not moved from the original spot, remaining for many thousands of years in the unknown. For decades, this encounter remained forgotten until it was discovered in the archives of the Argentinian newspaper. On November the 15th, 1967, the Rosario newspaper celebrated its 100-year anniversary. Shortly before, Manuel Acevedo from the sports section was tasked with the reviewing of the historical archive in search of eye-catching items. During that task, he found a text titled Eureka. Eureka, which included a letter signed by Serge and which impacted him deeply to the point of copying it with the intention of publishing it. However, the material was not included in the special edition, although Acevedo decided to keep it anyway. Then more than 10 years later, Serge's discovery finally came to light. Acevedo presented Serge's document in an 1877 edition, which allowed the story of the Carcaraña incident to spread nationwide. On March the 27th, 1978, the newspaper published the reissue under the title of Flying Saucers and Extraterrestrial Beings, generating great interest among specialists and enthusiasts. That same year, several researchers arrived in the city to verify the truth of the event hidden for a century. Notably, the Uruguayan ufologist and parapsychologist Fabio Serpa, who investigated the case through a review of records and interviews. Serpa and others concluded that the testimony reflected a fact considered real. Over time, many believed that the mummified ET body might be in a museum, without anyone knowing its connection to this case. So, could that meteorite have been a petrified UFO? And could the mummified ET found in it be one of the many alleged ET pictures circulating the internet now? My name is Al Barrows. This has been UFO Disclosure. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.